After 40 years of marriage, I decided it was finally time to reveal the secret I had kept buried for so long. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't carry the weight of it anymore. Secrets have a strange way of growing heavier with time, and mine was starting to suffocate me. My name is David, and I'm 68 years old. I've spent most of my life married to the woman I once believed was my soulmate. Linda was dazzling, the kind of woman who could light up any room she walked into. She was fiery, confident, and full of life. I was the opposite, reserved, soft-spoken, the kind of man who always put others first. Yet, somehow, our differences brought us together, and we built a life that, at least on the surface, seemed picture-perfect. For decades, I convinced myself that our marriage was a happy one. Sure, we had our struggles, arguments about money, raising our kids, and the occasional cold shoulder, but I told myself that was normal. Isn't that what marriage is? Weathering storms together and coming out stronger on the other side? But looking back now, I realize I was so focused on keeping Linda happy that I never stopped to ask if I was happy. Over the last few years, things began to change. Linda became colder, harsher. She would roll her eyes at me during conversations, mock me in front of friends, and complain endlessly about how boring and predictable I had become. I tried to brush it off as stress or a phase, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. She started staying out late, claiming she was catching up with friends or working on some new hobby. I noticed her phone glued to her hand, her laughter at text messages she wouldn't share with me, and the way she dismissed me when I asked innocent questions. For a while, I convinced myself it was all in my head. After all, we'd been married for 40 years. Surely she wouldn't betray me like that. But the gnawing feeling in my gut refused to let go. 2 weeks ago, I made a decision. If I was ever going to get the truth from her, I needed to start by telling my own. I had to share the secret I'd been holding on to for 4 decades. So, I planned a special evening, just the two of us. I cooked her favorite meal, set the table with candles, and even put on the suit I hadn't worn since our 25th wedding anniversary. It felt strange, almost surreal, to be putting in so much effort when I wasn't sure if it would even matter. When Linda walked through the door, her expression was a mixture of confusion and irritation. "What's all this?" she asked, tossing her purse onto the counter. "It's dinner," I said, forcing a smile. "There's something I need to talk to you about." She sighed, her annoyance palpable. "David, if this is another one of your "we need to work on our marriage" stunts, I'm really not in the mood." Her words stung, but I pressed on. I motioned for her to sit, and after a few moments of hesitation, she did. As we ate, I began to tell her everything. I told her about my past, about the things I had hidden from her, and about how much I regretted not sharing them sooner. When I finished, I looked up at her, searching for some sign of understanding, of compassion. But what I saw instead chilled me to the bone. Linda was laughing, not a kind or nervous laugh, but a cruel, mocking one that echoed through the room. "That's it. That's your big secret?" she said, leaning back in her chair with a smirk. "Honestly, David, I thought you were going to say something important, like you were dying or something. Who cares about your little past?" Her words were a slap to the face. I sat there stunned as she continued to laugh. But before I could even process what was happening, she dropped a bombshell that shattered my world. "Since we're being honest tonight," she said, "I might as well tell you. I've been seeing someone else." The fork slipped from my hand and clattered onto my plate. What did you just say?" I stammered. She shrugged as if it were no big deal. "I'm seeing someone. Someone who actually knows how to make me feel alive, unlike you." I felt the air leave my lungs as the weight of her words sank in. This wasn't just about a rough patch or an argument. This was the end of everything I thought I knew. The room fell silent after Linda's confession. I sat frozen, staring at her as if she were a stranger. The woman I had spent 40 years of my life with, the mother of my children, had just casually ripped my world apart, and she didn't even flinch. "Who is it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She smirked, swirling the wine in her glass. "Does it matter?" "Yes, it matters," I snapped, louder than I intended. She set the glass down with a clink and leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "Fine. His name is Mark. He's younger, successful, and—" She paused, her tone dripping with malice. "A lot more exciting than you." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. Mark. The name alone made my stomach churn. I tried to process her words, but the ground beneath me felt like it was crumbling. How long has this been going on? I asked, desperate for answers. She shrugged as if she were discussing the weather. A year, maybe longer. A year. An entire year of lies, deceit, and betrayal. My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the table, trying to steady myself. Why? The word escaped my lips before I could stop it. Why would you do this? Linda rolled her eyes, clearly bored with my reaction. Because, David, you're boring. You've always been boring. You spend your days tinkering in the garage, reading your stupid books, and pretending like that's enough. Well, it's not. I deserve more. Her words cut deeper than any knife ever could. I had always known I wasn't the most exciting person, but I had loved her with every fiber of my being. I had sacrificed so much for her, for our family, and this was how she repaid me. You could have talked to me, I said, my voice shaking. You could have told me how you felt instead of this. She laughed again, a cold, hollow sound. Talk to you? Please. You wouldn't have understood. You're too busy living in your little bubble, pretending everything's fine. Well, newsflash, David, it's not fine. It hasn't been fine for a long time. Her words stung, but there was something else in her tone, something smug, as if she were enjoying watching me unravel. What about our family? Our children? I asked, my voice cracking. She shrugged again. The kids are grown. They don't need us anymore. And frankly, I don't need you either. That was it. That was the moment I realized just how far gone she was. The woman I had loved, the woman I had built a life with, didn't exist anymore. In her place was someone I didn't recognize, someone who didn't care about the destruction she was leaving in her wake. I pushed back my chair and stood, my legs unsteady. I can't do this right now, I said, my voice barely audible. Linda waved me off, already pulling out her phone. Do whatever you need to do, David. I'm not stopping you. I stumbled out of the dining room, my mind racing. I needed air, space, anything to escape the suffocating weight of what had just happened. I grabbed my coat and headed out the front door, the cool night air hitting me like a slap in the face. As I walked aimlessly through the neighborhood, my thoughts spiraled. How had we gotten here? How had the life we built together disintegrated so completely? And what was I supposed to do now? By the time I returned home, it was nearly midnight. The house was dark, and Linda was nowhere to be seen. I made my way to the bedroom, hoping to find some semblance of normalcy, but when I opened the door, I stopped in my tracks. Her side of the closet was half empty, suitcases were gone, and a note sat on the bed. David, I'm staying with Mark for a while. Don't try to contact me. I need time to figure things out. No apology, no regret, just a cold, detached goodbye. I sank onto the bed, the note crumpling in my hand. She had walked away so easily, as if our life together meant nothing to her. But as the hours ticked by, a new feeling began to replace the sadness and despair, anger. She thought she could just walk away after everything I had sacrificed for her. For us? No, this wasn't over, not by a long shot. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of determination. I didn't know what I was going to do, but one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let her destroy me. I didn't sleep that night. The emptiness of the house felt unbearable, and the silence was louder than anything I'd ever experienced. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at Linda's note, trying to process the sheer audacity of her actions. After 40 years together, she thought she could just pack a bag, run off with some guy, and leave me with nothing but a crumpled piece of paper. The anger I felt earlier only grew stronger. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about the complete lack of respect. I had given her my entire life, sacrificed my dreams for hers. And this was how she repaid me? She didn't even have the decency to talk things through. By the time the sun came up, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to sit back and let her walk all over me. I wasn't going to be the pathetic, heartbroken husband she probably expected me to be. If Linda wanted to throw away our life together, then fine, but I wasn't going down without a fight. The first thing I did was pull out our financial records. For years, I had been the one managing our accounts while Linda spent freely. I never questioned her purchases, clothes, jewelry, business expenses. I just paid the bills and moved on. But now, with everything that had happened, I needed to know exactly where we stood. What I found shocked me. There were charges I didn't recognize. Hotel bookings, expensive dinners, even spa packages, all from places I'd never been. It didn't take a genius to figure out these were all tied to Mark. She had been using our shared accounts to fund her affair. The realization made my blood boil. Not only had she cheated on me, but she had done it on my dime. I spent hours going through the records, piecing together the timeline of her betrayal. Every charge, every receipt felt like a knife to the chest, but it also fueled my determination. If she thought she could leave me with nothing, she was sorely mistaken. The next step was to consult a lawyer. I made an appointment with one of the best divorce attorneys in town, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia who had a reputation for being ruthless. When I explained my situation, she leaned back in her chair, a sly smile on her face. "Well, David," she said, "it sounds like Linda's made this pretty easy for us. Adultery, financial abuse. This is practically gift-wrapped." For the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. Patricia assured me that we could freeze the accounts, secure the house, and make sure Linda wouldn't get a single penny more than she was entitled to. It wasn't much, but it was a start. That evening, I returned home with a newfound sense of purpose. I was still hurt, still angry, but at least now I had a plan. Linda had underestimated me, and I was determined to prove her wrong. But as I sat in the living room, staring at the empty space where her favorite chair used to be, a thought crept into my mind. What if this wasn't just about money? What if there was something deeper going on, something I hadn't yet uncovered? The next morning, I decided to dig deeper. I started with her laptop, which she had conveniently forgotten to take with her. It was password protected, but after 40 years of marriage, I knew her well enough to crack it. What I found on that laptop turned my stomach. There were emails, dozens of them, between Linda and Mark. They weren't just planning their romantic getaways. They were planning a future together. They had been talking about selling our house, liquidating our assets, and moving to another state. But that wasn't the worst part. One email in particular caught my attention. It was from Mark, sent just a week ago. "Once he's out of the picture, we'll have everything we need. Just stick to the plan. He's too much of a pushover to fight back." My hands trembled as I read the words over and over. They had been plotting against me, treating me like some obstacle to be removed. The betrayal ran deeper than I ever imagined. I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. Linda thought I was weak, a doormat she could walk all over. But she had made a critical mistake. She had underestimated me. If she wanted to play games, then so be it. I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to make sure she regretted ever underestimating me. I stared at the email, my vision blurring with a mix of rage and disbelief. How could someone I had spent my entire life with, someone I had trusted and loved unconditionally, stoop so low? Linda and Mark weren't just cheating. They were conspiring against me, treating me like a disposable pawn in their twisted game. My initial anger turned into a cold, calculated resolve. If they thought I was going to quietly fade into the background, they were dead wrong. I wasn't a pushover, and I sure as hell wasn't going to let them destroy me. The first thing I did was forward the incriminating emails to myself and save copies onto a USB drive. I wanted to ensure I had evidence in case things escalated, which I had no doubt they would. Then I called Patricia, my attorney, and updated her on the situation. "This changes everything," Patricia said, her tone sharp and focused. "With these emails, we can prove premeditated financial abuse and malicious intent." Linda's case just went from bad to catastrophic. Her words gave me a sense of vindication, but it wasn't enough. I didn't just want to win the legal battle. I wanted Linda and Mark to feel the full weight of their betrayal. That evening, I began piecing together a plan. It started with our joint finances. Using Patricia's guidance, I quickly froze all joint accounts to prevent Linda from accessing any more money. Then I canceled every credit card in my name that she might try to use. It was petty, maybe, but it was also necessary. Next, I reached out to our children, Anna and Michael. They were both grown and living their own lives, but they deserved to know what was happening. I didn't give them every detail, just enough to explain why their mother had left and why things were going to get messy. Anna was furious. "How could she do this to you?" "Dad, to us," she said over the phone. Michael was quieter, but I could sense his anger. "Let us know if you need anything, okay? We'll back you up." Their support meant everything to me. For years, I had felt like I was carrying the weight of our family on my own, but now I realized I wasn't alone. As the days passed, I continued digging into Linda's life. I found more evidence of her betrayal, receipts for expensive gifts, photos of her and Mark together, even messages she had sent to her friends bragging about how she was going to start fresh once she left me. But then I discovered something that shook me to my core. Hidden in a folder on her laptop was a document titled The Plan. My curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. What I read made my blood run cold. It wasn't just about running away with Mark. They had planned to take everything from me. The house, the savings, even the small business I had started after retiring. They wanted to leave me with nothing, believing I was too weak and docile to fight back. But what enraged me the most was a note at the bottom of the document, written by Linda. He'll never see it coming. David's too pathetic to do anything about it. Mark and I will be sipping cocktails on the beach while he's stuck in that miserable house all alone. I clenched my fists, the paper trembling in my hands. Pathetic. Miserable. No. If they thought they could reduce me to nothing, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. Fueled by a mix of fury and determination, I set my plan into motion. The first step was protecting the house. I met with Patricia to ensure Linda couldn't force a sale or claim ownership. Then I reached out to a private investigator, a no-nonsense man named Jack, to dig into Mark's background. Within days, Jack came back with a goldmine of information. Mark wasn't the successful businessman Linda thought he was. He was neck-deep in debt, had been fired from his last job for fraud, and was currently being investigated for embezzlement. The irony made me laugh out loud. Linda had thrown away 40 years of marriage for a con artist. Armed with this new information, I decided it was time to confront them. But I didn't want to do it on their terms. I wanted to catch them off guard, so I arranged a meeting. I sent Linda a text, pretending to be clueless. Linda, I think we should talk. Let's meet at the house tomorrow at 7 p.m. I need closure. She responded almost immediately. Fine, but don't expect me to change my mind. Perfect. The next evening, I sat in the living room, waiting. At exactly 7 p.m., I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. I looked out the window and saw Linda stepping out with Mark right behind her. The audacity of them showing up together made my blood boil, but I kept my composure. As they walked in, Linda gave me a smug smile. So what's this about, David? Finally ready to let go, I gestured for them to sit. They both looked surprised by how calm I was, but they took their seats across from me. I wanted to talk about what happens next, I said, keeping my tone steady. Linda rolled her eyes. David, there's nothing to talk about. Mark and I are moving on. You should too. I smiled, pulling out a folder and sliding it across the table. You might want to read this first. Linda frowned, opening the folder. As her eyes scanned the documents, bank statements, emails, and evidence of Mark's shady dealings, her confident facade began to crumble. What is this? She stammered. It's everything, I said. Your affair, your plans to steal from me, and Mark's criminal history. I have it all. Mark's face turned pale. You had no right to dig into my life, he hissed. I leaned back, finally feeling in control for the first time in years. You had no right to destroy mine. Linda looked at me, her expression a mix of anger and panic. What do you want, David? I stood, towering over them. What I want is for both of you to get out of my life. You're not taking the house, the money, or anything else. If you so much as try, I'll make sure every piece of dirt I've uncovered goes straight to the authorities. For the first time, Linda looked scared. Mark, on the other hand, was already halfway out the door. This isn't over. Linda spat as she stood to leave. Oh, it is, I said, my voice firm. You made sure of that. As they walked out, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. It wasn't the end, not yet, but it was a start. After Linda and Mark stormed out of the house, I sat back down in the silence they left behind. My hands were still shaking, but it wasn't from fear or sadness anymore. It was from adrenaline. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my life. But I knew this wasn't the end. Linda wouldn't just disappear quietly. She was too proud, too stubborn. And Mark, he struck me as the type who would do whatever it took to save his own skin, even if it meant dragging Linda down with him. The next morning, Patricia called. I've submitted the paperwork to freeze all joint assets, she said. Linda won't be able to touch a penny until this is resolved. Good, I replied. But there's more. I told her about the documents I'd found on Linda's laptop and the dirt Jack had uncovered about Mark. She paused for a moment, then let out a low whistle. Well, David, you've got them backed into a corner now. It's just a matter of seeing how they react. I didn't have to wait long to find out. 2 days later, Linda showed up unannounced. I opened the door to find her standing there with an expression I couldn't quite read, part anger, part desperation. We need to talk, she said, pushing past me into the house. Funny, I said, shutting the door behind her. That's what I said the other night. She spun around, her eyes blazing. You think you've won, don't you? Freezing the accounts, digging into Mark's past. What are you trying to prove? I'm not trying to prove anything, I said calmly. I'm protecting myself from you. Her face twisted with rage. You're pathetic, David. Do you really think you're some kind of hero? All you've done is make things harder for everyone. I took a deep breath, refusing to rise to her bait. Harder for who, Linda? You? Mark? I'm sorry if my refusal to roll over and let you destroy my life is inconvenient for you. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she paced the room, her hands clenched into fists. Finally, she stopped and faced me. Fine, she said. You win. I'll sign whatever you want, take whatever you're offering, and leave. Her sudden surrender caught me off guard. Linda was not the type to give up without a fight. What's the catch? I asked, narrowing my eyes. No catch, she said, her tone icy. I just want to move on with my life, and I can't do that with you standing in the way. I didn't believe her for a second, but I wasn't about to argue. I'll have Patricia draw up the paperwork, I said. She nodded, then turned to leave. But before she walked out the door, she paused and looked back at me. You think you're so clever, she said, her voice low and venomous. But you'll see. This isn't over. The door slammed behind her, and I was left standing there, her words echoing in my mind. She was right about one thing, it wasn't over. Linda's parting words stuck with me like a splinter under my skin. This isn't over. What did she mean by that? I wanted to believe it was just her pride talking, but deep down, I knew better. Linda wasn't the type to walk away without some kind of plan. I reached out to Patricia the next morning and told her about Linda's sudden willingness to settle. She didn't seem surprised. She's trying to lull you into a false sense of security, Patricia said. Mark's probably behind it too. Don't let your guard down, David. We'll finalize everything on paper, but until it's signed and sealed, assume the worst. I agreed. After everything I'd uncovered, it wasn't paranoia, it was survival. Later that day, my private investigator, Jack, called with more updates on Mark. You were right to dig into this guy, he said. Turns out he's got a criminal record longer than a CVS receipt, fraud, embezzlement, and he's currently under investigation for tax evasion. I let out a low whistle. Anything else? Jack hesitated before answering. Yeah, he's been married twice before, and both ex-wives accused him of domestic abuse. Linda probably has no idea what she's walking into. I felt a strange mix of emotions. On one hand, I wanted to warn her, to tell her what kind of man she had thrown away our marriage for. But on the other hand, she had made her choice. She didn't deserve my protection anymore. That evening, I decided to clear my head with a walk. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of stillness that felt almost unnatural. I was halfway down the street when a car pulled up beside me. I froze. The window rolled down, and there he was, Mark. His face was smug, his grin infuriatingly confident. David, he said, his voice dripping with fake politeness. Mind if we chat for a minute? I clenched my fists, but I kept my voice calm. I have nothing to say to you. Oh, but I think you do, he said, stepping out of the car. He was taller than I expected, but there was something about him that screamed insecurity, like he was overcompensating for something. I get it, Mark continued, leaning casually against his car. You're upset. You feel betrayed. But let's not make this harder than it needs to be. Linda is with me now, and you need to accept that. I took a step closer, my blood boiling. Accept it? You've spent the past year sleeping with my wife, plotting to steal everything I've worked for, and you expect me to just accept it? Mark smirked. Look, I don't want to fight. I'm giving you a chance to walk away with your dignity. Linda doesn't want a war, and neither do I. I stared at him, my mind racing. He wasn't here to make peace. He was here to intimidate me, to assert his control. You're right about one thing, I said, my voice low. This doesn't need to get messy. But if you think you're going to walk all over me, you're dead wrong. Mark's smirk faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. Suit yourself, he said, climbing back into his car. Just remember, you're not the only one with cards to play. As he drove off, I stood there, my heart pounding. His parting words were a warning, and I knew he meant them. When I got back home, I called Jack and told him about the encounter. Keep digging, I said. I want every detail you can find on Mark. No stone unturned. If Mark wanted a fight, he was about to get one. The encounter with Mark rattled me more than I wanted to admit. His smug demeanor, his veiled threats, it all felt like the prelude to something bigger, something darker. But I wasn't going to let him scare me. If he wanted to play games, I'd make sure he regretted every move. The next morning, Jack called with more updates. "David, I found something you're going to want to see," he said. "Mark's finances are even worse than we thought. He's drowning in debt, credit cards maxed out, unpaid loans, and a defaulted mortgage. The guy's living on borrowed time." It was exactly the kind of leverage I needed. "Anything else?" I asked. Jack hesitated. "Yeah, he's been trying to open new lines of credit, but every application's been denied. He's desperate, David. Desperate people do stupid things." His words stayed with me all day. Desperation made Mark dangerous, but it also made him reckless. He had backed himself into a corner, and I planned to use that to my advantage. Later that evening, I sat down with Patricia to review the divorce paperwork we had drafted. Terms that would leave Linda with as little as possible: no access to the house, no claim to my business, and only a small portion of our savings. She'd have to start over from scratch, and given Mark's financial situation, I doubted he'd be much help. "She won't like this," Patricia warned. "I don't care," I said. "She made her choices. Now she can live with them." The next day, Linda showed up unannounced again. This time she wasn't alone. Mark was with her, standing smugly at her side like he owned the place. "David," Linda said, her tone icy, "we need to talk." I folded my arms and leaned against the doorframe. "Funny how you only want to talk when it benefits you." Her eyes narrowed. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. Just sign over the accounts and the house, and we'll leave you alone." I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "Is that what you think? That you can waltz in here, demand everything I've worked for, and I'll just hand it over?" Mark stepped forward, his jaw clenched. "Listen, David, you don't want to drag this out. Do the smart thing and walk away." I stepped closer, meeting his gaze. "I'm not going anywhere, Mark. And if you think you can intimidate me, you're even dumber than you look." Linda scoffed, crossing her arms. "You're pathetic, David. You've always been pathetic. That's why I left. You're weak, spineless, and incapable of making me happy." Her words stung, but I refused to let her see it. "You left because you're selfish, Linda. Because you can't stand not being the center of attention. But let me tell you something. You and Mark deserve each other. You're both leeches, sucking the life out of anyone dumb enough to trust you." Mark lunged forward, but Linda grabbed his arm, holding him back. "Let's go," she hissed. "He's not worth it." As they turned to leave, I called after them. "Oh, and Mark, you might want to check your mailbox soon. I hear the IRS loves surprises." He froze, his face turning pale. Linda glanced at him, confused, but he quickly ushered her out the door. Once they were gone, I sat down and let out a long, shaky breath. The confrontation had taken everything out of me, but it was worth it. For the first time, I felt like I was winning. Jack called me later that night. "David, I've got good news. The IRS is officially looking into Mark's finances. It won't be long before they come knocking." I smiled for the first time in days. "Good. Let them take everything." The days that followed were eerily quiet. Linda and Mark didn't contact me again, and for a moment, I wondered if they had finally given up. But deep down, I knew better. People like them didn't just walk away. They schemed, they plotted, and they struck when you least expected it. I kept busy, preparing for whatever was coming next. Patricia had finalized the divorce papers, and I was ready to submit them to the court. Every clause had been carefully crafted to protect me and ensure Linda wouldn't get a dime more than the bare minimum. Then, late one evening, my phone buzzed. It was Jack. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "Mark was arrested today. The IRS got him on tax fraud, and they're digging into his other activities. This guy's in deep." I felt a wave of satisfaction wash over me. It was poetic justice. Mark, the smug, arrogant man who thought he could take everything from me, was now facing the consequences of his own actions. "And Linda?" I asked. "She's still with him," Jack replied, "for now. But I wouldn't be surprised if she cuts ties the moment things get worse for him. She's not exactly the loyal type." I let out a bitter laugh. "No, she's not." The next morning, I got a call from Patricia. "Linda's attorney reached out," she said. "She's trying to negotiate a larger settlement, claiming emotional damages and lost income." I rolled my eyes. "Of course she is." Patricia chuckled. "Don't worry, we've got her backed into a corner. With Mark out of the picture and her financial situation crumbling, she doesn't have much leverage. I'd say she's getting desperate. Desperation was exactly what I had been waiting for. 2 days later, Linda showed up at the house again. This time she was alone. Her confident facade was gone, replaced by a strained, almost haggard look. "David," she said, her voice softer than usual, "can we talk?" I stepped aside, letting her in. She walked into the living room and sat down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I heard about Mark," she said quietly. I nodded, saying nothing. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in years: vulnerability. "I made a mistake," she admitted. I thought I was doing what was best for me, but I see now how wrong I was." I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorway. "And what exactly do you want from me, Linda? Forgiveness? Sympathy?" She flinched at my tone, but pressed on. I need your help, David. I don't have anywhere else to go." Her words hung in the air like a bad smell. After everything she had done, after the lies, the betrayal, the humiliation, she had the audacity to come crawling back to me. I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "Help you? You must be joking." "Please," she said, her voice cracking. "I know I don't deserve it, but I don't have anyone else. Mark's gone and She trailed off, tears streaming down her face. For a brief moment, I felt a pang of pity, but it was quickly replaced by the memory of everything she had put me through. "No, Linda," I said firmly. "You don't deserve it. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them." She stared at me, her tears falling freely now. "David, please. I'll sign whatever you want. Just let me stay until I figure things out." I shook my head. "No, you don't get to come back here and pretend like everything's fine. This is my life now, and you're not a part of it anymore." She opened her mouth to protest, but I held up a hand to stop her. "Leave, Linda, and don't come back." For the first time, she looked truly defeated. Without another word, she stood and walked out the door. As I watched her go, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was over. For the first time in years, I was free. In the days that followed, I finalized the divorce and began the process of rebuilding my life. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. I had spent too long living in Linda's shadow, too long sacrificing my happiness for someone who never appreciated it. Now, I was finally learning what it meant to put myself first.